Bikers harass female truck driver. Until her military K9s show their training, Sarah Walker had spent the last 10 years on the road as a long-haul truck driver. With her military background as a K9 handler in the U.S. Army, she was no stranger to tough situations. But she preferred the peace and quiet of the highway, just her and her two loyal companions, Rex, a Belgian Malinois, and Shadow, a German Shepherd. Both dogs had been trained as military working dogs, and even though they were retired, their instincts were as sharp as ever. She was hauling a refrigerated load across the country, cutting through a remote stretch of highway in Arizona. The sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of red and orange as Sarah checked her mirrors. The road was mostly empty, save for a group of motorcycles approaching from behind. At first, she paid them no mind. Bikers often traveled in groups, and most were harmless. But as the rumble of their engines grew louder and they spread out around her truck, she noticed something unsettling. They weren't just passing by, they were pacing her. A few of them pulled up alongside her cab, revving their engines loudly. One of them, a burly man with a skull-patterned bandana covering his face, smirked and made an obscene gesture. Another, riding a sleek black Harley, threw a beer can at her truck, the aluminum bouncing off the side panel with a dull clang. Sarah's grip tightened on the wheel. She had dealt with plenty of aggressive drivers before, but this was different. These guys weren't just being obnoxious, they were trying to intimidate her. She took a deep breath, glancing back at her sleeping dogs in the cabin behind her seat. Rex's ears twitched, and Shadow's head lifted slightly, sensing something was wrong. The bikers weren't done. One of them sped ahead and swerved dangerously in front of her truck, forcing her to slow down. Another pulled up close to her driver's side window, leering at her. "Hey, sweetheart," he shouted over the roar of the engines. "Why don't you pull over and we'll have a little fun?" Sarah didn't respond. She was already scanning her options. There was a rest stop a few miles ahead, but she wasn't about to stop there with these guys around. Instead, she flicked a switch on her dashboard, activating the external security cameras. The footage was being recorded, just in case things escalated. Unfortunately, they did. One of the bikers tossed something onto the road ahead, what looked like a chain or a strip of metal spikes. Sarah had no choice but to slow down even more to avoid it. The moment she did, the bikers surrounded her truck completely, forcing her onto the shoulder. She exhaled sharply. Enough was enough. She reached back, giving a quick command. "Rex, Shadow, watch." Both dogs immediately perked up, ears forward, eyes locked onto her for further instruction. Sarah slowly opened her door, stepping down with careful precision. She wasn't scared, she was calculating. The bikers, mistaking her calm demeanor for nervousness, laughed. The leader, the one with the skull bandana, swung off his bike and approached. "Didn't mean to scare you, lady," he said mockingly. "We just wanted to say hello." Sarah smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You've said enough." He reached for her arm, but before his fingers could graze her sleeve, she gave a sharp whistle. Rex and Shadow exploded from the truck like missiles. Rex, the Malinois, launched himself at the leader, knocking him clean off his feet before clamping his powerful jaws onto the man's arm. The biker screamed, thrashing, but Rex held firm, just as he had been trained to do in military operations. Shadow, the German Shepherd, went after the man who had thrown the beer can, lunging at him with a deep, menacing snarl. The biker stumbled backward, falling onto the gravel, his hands raised in terror. The rest of the bikers panicked. Some revved their engines, kicking up dust as they tried to get away, while others froze, unsure of what to do. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady but commanding. "Call them off." Skull bandana gasped, still pinned under Rex's weight. "Not until you and your buddies back off." "We get it. We get it," one of the other bikers shouted, throwing up his hands. "Call off the dogs." Sarah gave a sharp command, and both dogs immediately released their targets, retreating to her side but staying alert. The leader scrambled back to his feet, cradling his injured arm, his eyes burning with anger, but also fear. "You crazy, I have everything recorded," Sarah interrupted coldly, pointing to her truck's security cameras. "If I see you or your little gang again, I'll make sure the police get a nice copy of your stunt." The bikers hesitated for only a second before they scrambled back onto their bikes, engines roaring as they took off down the highway. Skull bandana lingered just a second longer, glaring at her before following his crew. As their taillights disappeared into the night, Sarah exhaled, her tension fading. She turned to her dogs, who looked up at her expectantly. Good boys. She knelt, ruffling their fur, and smiled. Let's get out of here. She climbed back into her truck, her K9s settling beside her once more. As she pulled back onto the highway, she glanced at the rearview mirror. The road was empty again, just as it should be. And she had no doubt that if anyone else tried to mess with her, her military-trained protectors would be ready. The highway stretched before Sarah like an endless ribbon of asphalt, the events of the last few minutes still fresh in her mind. She had dealt with trouble before, but something about that gang of bikers unsettled her. Rex and Shadow had settled back down, their ears still perked as if expecting more trouble. They could sense it. Sarah could too. She had a gut feeling that Skull Bandana and his gang wouldn't let this go so easily. Checking her mirrors, she drove cautiously, scanning the darkening horizon for any signs of the bikers. The miles rolled by in silence except for the hum of her engine. Her next planned stop was a large truck stop just outside of Phoenix. It was a well-lit, busy place where she could fuel up, grab a coffee, and let the dogs stretch their legs. Most importantly, it would be harder for the gang to make a move on her in public. But just as she was starting to relax, headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. A dozen of them. She clenched her jaw. The bikers were back. They spread out across the highway like a pack of predators, their engines snarling in the night. They weren't messing around this time. Sarah kept her hands steady on the wheel, her mind racing through her options. She had no intention of letting them box her in again, but she wasn't about to start a high-speed chase in an 80,000-pound rig either. She tapped her GPS 10 miles to the truck stop. If she could just hold out, the bikers accelerated. A thud shook the side of her truck as one of them hurled something at it, another beer can, or maybe something heavier. Another biker veered dangerously close to her front wheels, forcing her to tap the brakes. Sarah inhaled deeply, then exhaled slowly. Fine. If they wanted to fight, she was ready. She reached for the radio and switched to Channel 19, the trucker's universal channel. This is Roadrunner, she said, using her CB handle. Got some company out on I-10, and they ain't friendly. Any eyes on this? A crackle came through the radio before a gruff voice responded. Roadrunner, this is Big Mike. You got trouble? Affirmative, she replied. Motorcycle gang, 12, maybe more. They boxed me in once already. Might try it again. Where you at? Another voice chimed in. 10 miles west of the Phoenix truck stop. The radio was silent for a second, then Big Mike came back. Hang tight, darling. You got friends up ahead. Sarah smirked. Truckers looked out for their own. She kept her speed steady, watching as the bikers closed in. She could see their leader now, Skull Bandana, just as she expected. He was grinning like a man who thought he had already won. But Sarah knew better. A mile ahead, the bright lights of the truck stop came into view. And just beyond that, something even better. The silhouettes of several massive 18-wheelers were lined up along the side of the highway. Engines idling. Waiting. Sarah's radio crackled again. We see ya, Roadrunner. Bring him in. Her heart swelled with gratitude. These weren't just truckers, these were road warriors. Veterans of the highway. And they weren't about to let some gang of thugs mess with one of their own. Sarah pressed her foot down, pushing her rig faster. The bikers must have realized something was wrong because Skull Bandana hesitated, his eyes flicking to the truck stop ahead. Too late. As Sarah barreled toward the entrance, the parked trucks roared to life. 5 enormous semis pulled onto the highway at once, forming an impenetrable wall of steel. The bikers skidded to a halt, tires screeching. Sarah swung her rig into the truck stop, parking among the other big rigs. She climbed down, Rex and Shadow flanking her, their sharp eyes locked onto the stunned gang. A group of truckers, big and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. Big Mike, a burly man with a thick beard and arms like tree trunks, folded his arms over his chest. You boys lost. Skull Bandana looked around, sizing up the situation. He wasn't stupid. He knew he was outnumbered. One of his gang members muttered something, and Skull Bandana snarled in frustration. With a final glare at Sarah, he revved his engine and turned his bike around. One by one, the others followed. Sarah watched them go, exhaling slowly. Big Mike turned to her. You all right, Roadrunner? She smiled. Better now. Thanks, fellas. Mike grinned. Ain't no thing. We look after our own. Sarah nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie she hadn't felt in years. As she climbed back into her truck, she reached down to scratch behind Rex and Shadow's ears. Good boys, she murmured. Guess we've got more friends than we thought. With the danger behind her and the road ahead, Sarah pulled back onto the highway, knowing that no matter where she went, she was never truly alone. The highway was peaceful again as Sarah continued her journey. The encounter with the bikers had left her shaken, but not broken. She was used to handling trouble, and her K9 partners, Rex and Shadow, had proven that they were always ready to stand by her side. But deep down, Sarah knew it wasn't over. Guys like Skull Bandana didn't take humiliation well. He might have backed down at the truck stop, but that didn't mean he was done with her. And she wasn't about to spend the rest of her trip looking over her shoulder. So she made a decision. Instead of heading straight to her delivery destination, she made a detour, one that would put an end to this nonsense once and for all. A few hours later, Sarah pulled into a small diner off a dusty stretch of road. It was one of those old-fashioned truck stops, the kind where the coffee was strong, the burgers were greasy, and everyone knew each other. She parked her rig in the lot and climbed out, letting Rex and Shadow stretch their legs. Inside, the place was half empty, except for a couple of locals and a familiar group of bikers at the counter. Skull Bandana and his gang. They hadn't noticed her yet. She took her time, walking in with the ease of someone who wasn't afraid. She made her way to the counter, standing a few feet from Skull Bandana. She could feel the tension as one of the bikers noticed her, nudging the leader. Skull Bandana turned, his face darkening when he saw her. "You got a death wish, lady?" Sarah smirked. "Nah, just figured we should finish what we started." The diner went silent. Even the cook behind the grill paused, watching. Skull Bandana laughed, a cruel, humorless sound. "You think you can walk in here alone and call me out?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Who said I'm alone?" As if on cue, the low growl of Rex and Shadow filled the air. The bikers turned to see both dogs standing in the doorway, teeth bared, their eyes locked onto the gang. But it wasn't just the dogs. The bell above the door jingled as several large truckers walked in, Big Mike among them. They spread out, taking up positions around the room, their sheer presence making it clear that Sarah wasn't the one who should be worried. Skull Bandana's cocky grin faltered. Sarah leaned in slightly, her voice cold and even. "You think you own the road, but here's the thing, you don't. Out there, truckers look after their own. So here's the deal. You and your boys? You leave me the hell alone. You ever try that stunt again, and you won't just be dealing with me and my dogs." She gestured toward the truckers. "You'll be dealing with all of us." Silence. For a long moment, Skull Bandana looked around, realizing he was surrounded. His jaw clenched, but he wasn't stupid enough to push his luck. He stood abruptly, throwing some cash on the counter. "We're done here," he muttered. One by one, the bikers followed him out. The sound of motorcycles starting up filled the night air, and then, just like that, they were gone. Sarah turned to Big Mike, who was grinning. "Damn, Roadrunner. You got some guts." She chuckled. "Just tired of dealing with idiots." Mike clapped her on the shoulder. "Well, you got friends on the road now. Anytime you need backup, just holler." Sarah smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, a real sense of belonging. As she walked out of the diner, Rex and Shadow at her heels, she took a deep breath of the cool night air. She had faced the danger head-on. She had won. Now, it was time to hit the road. This time, without looking over her shoulder.